I believed choosing the throne would make me stronger. It did, just not in the way I expected. Because power teaches you how to stand alone, and love teaches you what you lose when you do. I never told him goodbye, yet everything I am now was shaped by that silence. Life inside the palace moved with practiced grace. Mornings scented with polished stone and fresh linen. Laughter echoing softly through corridors meant for echoes, not joy. I learned when to smile, when to listen, when to appear untouched, and still, there were moments of light, shared glances that felt like mischief, conversations that made the walls seem less heavy, a love that asked for nothing but honesty and offered me myself in return. Every day, the crown waited patiently, reminding me that some choices do not ask what your heart can survive, only what the kingdom requires. I was not born to the throne. That truth followed me like a shadow no one else could see. In the mirrors of the palace, in the long corridors where footsteps echoed before my own, I often searched my reflection for signs of inevitability. I never found them. I found a woman learning to stand straighter than she felt, smiling when silence would have been more honest. My childhood unfolded in rooms too large for laughter. Stone walls absorbed sound, and even joy arrived softened, careful not to disturb the weight of history that pressed against every tapestry. I learned early how to listen without speaking, how to curtsy without bowing my spirit, how to read faces that revealed nothing yet promised everything. Still, I was not unhappy. There were gardens beyond the eastern wing where roses grew wild, untamed by royal design. I escaped there whenever lessons ended. Law, lineage, treaties that predated my grandparents. The roses did not care who I was meant to become. They bloomed regardless. That was where I first learned that love could arrive without permission. He did not bow when we met. That detail stayed with me, sharper than his smile, more intimate than his voice. He stood as if the earth beneath us was shared ground. No titles, no distance. Just a man with ink-stained fingers and eyes that noticed everything. "You are standing in the sun," he said, casually, as though I were any woman and not wrapped in silk and expectation. "You'll burn." I laughed, an untrained sound. It startled us both. "I doubt that," I replied. "I've survived worse." His mouth curved upward, amused but not impressed. "Then you should seek shade anyway. Even strong things need rest." That was the first kindness he gave me. Not reverence, not fear, but concern. He was commissioned to restore old court records, parchments damaged by damp and neglect. A quiet task, tucked away from ceremony. I found excuses to walk past the archive wing. He found reasons to remain where I could see him. We spoke of small things at first. Books, music drifting through windows at dusk. He told me stories of towns beyond the capital. Noisy, crowded, full of life. I told him nothing of myself that mattered, yet he seemed to know me better than most who used my name daily. He laughed easily. He teased without cruelty. He listened, truly listened. When I spoke in his presence, I was not a future carved in stone. I was simply a woman, learning what it meant to want. The palace noticed, of course. It always does. Eyes lingered longer. Conversations paused when I entered. Invitations arrived with more urgency. Dinners with sharper questions hidden beneath politeness. My mother watched me carefully, love and calculation sharing space behind her gaze. "You smile more," she said once, as servants adjusted the train of my gown. "Be mindful of why." I nodded, because that was what daughters did. But in the evenings, I returned to the gardens, to the quiet, to him. He never asked who I would become. He asked who I was when no one watched. That frightened me more than the crown ever had. There were moments of laughter that felt stolen from another life. We raced down corridors after midnight, shoes in hand, breathless with the absurdity of it. We shared wine meant for visiting dignitaries and found it far too dry for romance. We danced once, clumsily, to music drifting faintly from a distant hall, not touching at first, then closer, then laughing when our steps tangled. It was not grand. It was not forbidden passion in moonlight. It was easy. That was the danger. The first time he touched my hand, it was accidental. Or perhaps we pretended it was. His fingers were warm, steady. I felt the world narrow, sharpen, as though every path before me suddenly revealed its cost. "I shouldn't," I whispered. He did not pull away. He did not press closer either. "Then don't," he said gently. "But don't pretend you don't want to." I loved him for that honesty. I hated him for it too, because wanting was not something I had been raised to understand. The crown was not a symbol in my youth. It was a weight passed down through stories of sacrifice disguised as honor. Every ruler before me had loved something they were forced to abandon: a person, a peace, a dream. It was spoken of softly, almost fondly, as though loss were a rite of passage rather than a wound. I had sworn I would be different, yet there I was, falling in love with a man who did not belong to my future, no matter how fiercely my heart argued otherwise. When whispers reached the council, they came wrapped in concern. When warnings arrived, they carried smiles. No one ordered me to stop seeing him. They did not need to. They spoke instead of stability, of alliances, of the people. The throne is not yours alone. My uncle reminded me during a quiet breakfast. It belongs to the realm, and the realm watches. I looked down at my plate, appetite gone. Later that day, I found him waiting for me in the archive, sunlight spilling across the floor. He was humming softly, unaware that the walls were closing in. I watched him for a moment longer than necessary. In that pause lived everything I would later lose. "Come away with me," he said suddenly, turning as if he had felt my gaze. He smiled, but his eyes searched my face. Just for a day. No guards, no names. I wanted to say yes. The word rested on my tongue, heavy with possibility. Instead, I said nothing. That was when I first understood that love, when placed beside a crown, does not shatter immediately. It waits. I did not answer him that day, not with words at least. I smiled, stepped closer, adjusted a parchment on the table, as though I had come for a reason that did not include him. He watched me with that quiet patience that had become both my refuge and my undoing. "You didn't say no," he observed lightly. "I didn't say yes either." He laughed, soft and unoffended. "You never do. You live between answers." That sentence followed me for weeks. I lived between answers in everything, between duty and desire, between the woman I was and the ruler I was expected to become. The palace encouraged that state. Indecision was considered grace, hesitation a sign of thoughtfulness. No one told you that living between answers slowly eroded the self. Our meetings continued, though never planned. Chance became our ally. A corridor at dusk, a stairwell rarely used, the gardens just before rain. Each encounter felt both reckless and absurdly innocent, as though the world might forgive us if we did not name what we were doing. He began to tell me more of himself, his childhood near the coast, a mother who sang while cooking, a father who believed books could save men from becoming cruel. These details were offered without ceremony, without the careful polishing that surrounded my own history. In return, I offered fragments, hints, a story about sneaking out as a girl, a confession that I hated, formal banquets. Never the truth had mattered, never the word thrown. Yet somehow, he knew. One afternoon, as we walked beneath bare branches in the winter garden, he stopped abruptly. "You carry something heavy," he said. "Heavier than your name." I tried to dismiss it. "Everyone does." "Yes," he replied, "but not everyone lets it decide who they love." I turned to him then, startled by the accuracy. His face held no accusation, only concern. "You speak as if love were a decision," I said. He smiled, but it was a sadder expression than usual. "It is. The feeling arrives uninvited. Staying is the choice." That night, sleep abandoned me. I lay awake, listening to the distant rhythms of the palace, realizing how carefully my life had been arranged to prevent exactly this kind of clarity. The council increased their attentions soon after. Invitations multiplied, conversations lengthened. I was seated beside men whose gazes measured not my thoughts but my suitability. They spoke of alliances that would secure borders, of marriages that would strengthen claims. Love was never mentioned. My mother joined me one evening as I brushed my hair. She moved slowly now, age softening her movements but sharpening her perception. "You remind me of myself," she said, meeting my eyes in the mirror. I paused. When I believed happiness and responsibility could be negotiated, she did not say more. She did not need to. I wanted to ask her what she had given up. I wanted to know if she had ever chosen differently in her dreams. Instead, I set down the brush and rose. "I am not ready," I said. She reached for my hand. "No one ever is. That is not the measure." Days later, I found him again in the garden, rain threatening overhead. He looked restless, pacing rather than reading. "You're avoiding me," he said, without anger. "I'm being watched." "Then let them watch." "That's not how this works." He stopped in front of me, closer than was wise. Then tell me how it works. Tell me what rules I'm breaking. I opened my mouth, then closed it. The truth pressed against my ribs. I cannot give you certainty, I said finally. Only moments. His expression softened, but something guarded entered his eyes. Moments are precious, but they are not a life. I know. Then why do you keep coming? Because with you, I remember myself. Because laughter comes easily. Because when you touch my hand, I am not alone. I don't know how to leave, I admitted. He nodded slowly. Neither do I that night. We shared our first real argument. It was quiet, restrained, more painful for its calm. You think duty excuses everything, he said, as if the crown were a living thing that bleeds. It does, I replied sharply, just not visibly. And what about you? Do you bleed? The question cut deeper than any accusation. Yes, I said. Every day. He reached for me then, instinctively, and stopped himself. The restraint hurt more than touch would have. I won't be your secret forever, he said gently. I won't disappear slowly. I respected him for that. I loved him more for saying it. The palace prepared for a seasonal celebration. Weeks of performances and feasts meant to distract the court from growing tensions beyond our borders. Music filled the halls. Laughter echoed. For a brief time, even I almost believed the illusion. He attended one evening, invited under the pretense of scholarly contribution. He wore a simple dark coat, clean but unadorned. He looked out of place and entirely himself. We danced, not as lovers, not openly, just two figures moving in polite distance, eyes speaking what mouths could not. When the music ended, he bowed slightly, a private gesture that meant everything. Later, tucked away behind a row of columns, he whispered, "If this is all we are allowed, I would still choose it." The words warmed me. They terrified me too, because I was beginning to understand the cost of choice. I stood at the edge of my chambers that night, crown resting on a cushion nearby, untouched. I looked at it for a long time. Gold, cold, beautiful, empty, without a head to bear it. I imagined a life without it. The simplicity of mornings ungoverned by protocol. The scandal, the relief, the freedom. I imagined his hand in mine, unhidden. And then I imagined the faces of those who depended on stability, the fragile peace, the weight of generations. Love asked me to leap. The crown asked me to endure. I did not yet know which demand would claim me, but the struggle had begun to shape me, carving regret before the choice was even made. The council chamber was warmer than usual, thick with the scent of wax and anticipation. I noticed it the moment I entered, the subtle shift, the way conversations ended a breath too quickly. Faces turned toward me with rehearsed expressions of respect. They had already decided something. I was the last to arrive, as always, to my own fate. They spoke first of borders, then of grain shortages, of unrest in the northern provinces, of neighboring courts watching us with increasing interest. Each concern was laid carefully on the table, like pieces of a game whose rules I had learned long ago, but never truly questioned. Only when the weight was sufficient did they speak of marriage. Stability, one counselor said, folding his hands. Continuity, a union that reassures the realm. Another added, and our allies. I listened, I nodded, I asked measured questions. I performed competence flawlessly. Inside, I felt myself growing quieter. The name they offered meant little to me, a prince from a powerful house, well-educated, impeccably mannered. I had met him once. He had spoken to me as one speaks to a future asset, careful and distant. There was no cruelty in him, no warmth either. He was perfect. That night, I did not go to the gardens. I walked instead through the long gallery of ancestors, their painted eyes following me with judgment softened by time. Women who had smiled as queens and wept as wives. Men who had conquered lands, yet failed to understand their own children. I wondered what they would advise me, if they could speak honestly. I wondered if any of them had ever been brave. He found me 2 days later, not by chance, by intention. He was waiting near the small chapel, where the palace quieted into reverence rather than secrecy. His posture was composed, but his eyes betrayed impatience. "You're being summoned," he said simply. "Yes, and you didn't think to tell me." I didn't know how. "That's not true." His voice was calm, but hurt lived beneath it. "You knew exactly how. You chose not to." I exhaled slowly. "They want me to marry." The words sounded unreal, even as I spoke them. He did not react immediately. He looked away, jaw tightening, as though steadying himself against a blow he had always expected. When he asked, "They haven't said?" "They have." I said nothing. He laughed then, once, softly, without humor. "So this is how it ends. Not with a scandal, not with a fight, with polite conversations behind closed doors." "It hasn't ended," I protested. "Not yet. That's worse." I reached for his hand without thinking. This time, he did not pull away. "You don't see the whole board," I said. "Every move affects more than us." "I see that you're afraid," he replied, "and I don't blame you for it. I blame the world that taught you fear was virtue." The words stung because they were spoken with kindness. We began to argue more after that. Not loudly, not dramatically. Our disagreements were measured, intelligent, devastating. Each conversation peeled away another illusion. He challenged the narratives I had accepted as truth. I defended them with logic that sounded increasingly hollow even to me. "You speak of duty as if it were sacred," he said once. "But duty without choice is just obedience, and love without responsibility is selfish," I countered. "Is it selfish to want a life?" I had no answer. The palace, sensing the tension, closed in. Invitations multiplied again. I was rarely alone. When letters arrived, from nobles, from foreign courts, from those who saw opportunity in my hesitation, even joy became strategic. There was a hunt arranged in my honor, full of laughter and feigned camaraderie. I rode beside the prince they wished me to consider. He spoke well. He listened politely. He made no attempt to touch me. At lunch he said, "I don't envy your position." I looked at him sharply. "Then why accept it?" He smiled faintly. "Because I understand power and its price." That night, I cried for reasons I could not articulate. When I saw him again, my love, my quiet rebellion, something had shifted. He was gentler, but more distant, as though he were already preparing himself for absence. "I don't want to be the reason you resent your life," he said. "You're the reason I endure it," I replied. He shook his head. "That's not enough. Not forever." We walked through the city once, disguised, unnoticed. It was the closest I ever came to freedom. Street musicians played, children laughed, vendors argued cheerfully over prices. No one bowed, no one watched. He bought me a small pastry, far too sweet. We shared it, laughing like conspirators. "See," he said, "this life exists." "Yes," I whispered, "and it's beautiful." He looked at me then, truly looked, as if memorizing my face. "If you ever choose it fully." The council met again soon after. This time, there was no pretense. The realm was restless. Allies demanded reassurance. A decision was required. I sat at the head of the table, hands folded, heart pounding with a clarity that felt cruel. I understood then that the crown was not forcing me, it was waiting, and I was the one who would have to place it upon my own head, knowing exactly what I would lose in the process. War does not announce itself loudly at first. It arrives in murmurs, in letters sealed too carefully, in messengers who speak quickly and leave faster than usual, in maps spread across tables long after dinners have ended. I sensed it before anyone said the word. The council began to summon me at odd hours. Dawn meetings replaced afternoon deliberations. Generals appeared where poets once stood. The palace corridors filled with unfamiliar boots, their echoes heavier than silk slippers ever were. The border skirmishes were described as minor, contained, temporary. They always are. At the beginning, I studied the faces around the table while reports were read aloud. Men trained to calculate loss without naming it. Men who spoke of villages as positions, of lives as numbers that could be adjusted. When they finished, they looked at me. "The realm needs certainty," the High Chancellor said. "A united front, a symbol." I knew what he meant. They all did. The crown alone was no longer enough. That evening, I stood at the window of my chambers, watching clouds gather like bruises along the horizon. Somewhere beyond those walls, people lived without knowing their names were being folded into strategy. He came to me later, unannounced, not through secret passages or stolen glances. He knocked. I opened the door myself. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The distance between us felt wider than any corridor we had crossed before. "They're preparing for war," he said. "Yes. And you're preparing to disappear behind the crown. I'm preparing to survive what comes next." He stepped inside, closing the door softly behind him. "That's not the same thing." We sat across from one another, the small table between us, suddenly insufficient. I poured wine neither of us drank. "I won't ask you to choose me," he said quietly. I know that choice has already been made in pieces. I looked at him sharply. You don't know that. I do. His voice did not rise. Because when danger comes, you always move toward the fire, not away from it. I had never thought of it that way. I had called it responsibility. He called it courage, laced with some. They will use you, he continued. Your marriage, your image, your sacrifice. And when it is over, they will praise your strength and forget what it cost. You speak as if you're certain. I am. I stood, restless. What would you have me do? Abandon them, leave the realm to fracture? No, he said immediately. I would have you be honest. With them, with yourself. With me. I stopped pacing. Honesty will not stop an army, but it might stop you from losing yourself. That night, the palace hosted a farewell banquet for envoys returning to their courts. The air shimmered with forced optimism. Music played too loudly. Laughter came to icily. I wore the crown for the first time in public. Not fully, not yet, but enough. It settled on my head with a familiar weight, as though it had been waiting patiently for me to accept it. Applause followed. Cheers, relief. Across the hall, I saw him watching. He did not bow. He simply met my eyes and nodded once, a gesture of respect untainted by submission. I held his gaze longer than was wise. Later, as the evening unraveled into polite chaos, the prince approached me. You wear it well, he said. I haven't decided if that's praise or warning. He smiled faintly. Both perhaps. We spoke of the coming weeks, of logistics, of appearances. He was courteous, careful, offering partnership rather than possession. I realized then that he, too, was a sacrifice, willing, informed, complicit. That did not make the choice easier. The following days blurred into preparation. Speeches drafted and redrafted. Military councils, private audiences with nobles whose loyalty required constant reassurance. In the margins of it all, I searched for moments with him, my love, my quiet rebellion, but they became rare. Not because I avoided him, but because the palace no longer allowed space for coincidence. When we did meet, it was brief, a touch of fingers passing a document, a look across a room, a smile that carried more sorrow than joy. You're slipping away, he said once, as we stood beneath the arches of the old wing. I'm still here. Your body is, your heart is already bracing for impact. He was right. I had begun to imagine the future without him, not as possibility, but as inevitability. That frightened me more than war ever could. The first official declaration arrived at dawn. Not war, they called it. A defensive response, a necessary action. By midday, the city buzzed with tension. By nightfall, the palace was sealed tighter than I had ever known it. I was summoned to the council chamber alone. They stood when I entered, every one of them. The time has come, the chancellor said. The realm must see strength, unity, continuity. He gestured to the cushion before me. The crown waited. I thought of the gardens, of laughter echoing down corridors, of ink-stained fingers and stolen pastries, of a life that existed just beyond reach, fragile and bright. I thought of the people who would never know my name yet would feel the consequences of my choice. I knelt. The crown was placed upon my head with solemn care. In that moment, the room exhaled. Relief washed over faces that had learned to mask fear with ceremony. I stood, queen. That night, I did not sleep. I dismissed my attendants and sat alone, the crown resting beside me once more. It looked different now, less symbolic, more real. A knock sounded at the door. I knew who it would be. He entered without waiting for permission. I heard. He said, "Yes, so it's done." Yes. He crossed the room slowly, stopping a few steps away. "Then this is goodbye." The words struck harder than any shout. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. I reached for him, forgetting everything I had been taught. This time, he let me touch him. Just once, his hand against my cheek, warm, familiar, devastating. "I loved you," he said, in the only way I knew how, without claiming you. Tears blurred my vision. "I still do." He smiled sadly. "That's what will haunt you." He stepped back before I could stop him. "At least let me know," he added gently, "that you didn't choose the crown because you were afraid to love me." I held his gaze, forcing myself to answer honestly. "I chose it because too many lives depend on my endurance." He nodded. "Then, endure." He left without looking back. The door closed softly behind him. I stood alone, crowned and hollow, listening to the distant sounds of a city preparing for war, and to the quieter sound of my heart learning what survival truly costs. The palace grew quieter after that, not peaceful, never peaceful, but muted, as though every sound had learned restraint. Servants spoke softly, doors closed with care. Even footsteps seemed to hesitate before crossing thresholds. I moved through my days with practiced composure. I attended councils. I signed decrees. I listened to reports from the front, absorbing the language of loss without letting it settle on my face. They called me steady. Inside, something was unraveling. I did not see him again. At first, I told myself it was coincidence, then necessity, then mercy. Eventually, I understood it for what it was. Separation enacted by silence. The most efficient kind. The prince visited often. He never intruded, never rushed. He spoke to me as an equal, sometimes even as a friend. We discussed strategies, appearances, the careful choreography of unity. He asked nothing of my heart. That restraint made him respectable. It did not make him loved. At night, when the crown was removed and my hair loosened, the walls felt closer, the bed too large. I caught myself listening for footsteps that would never come, for a knock I had both longed for and feared. Sleep arrived in fragments. Dreams brought me back to the gardens, to laughter, to warmth unshadowed by consequence. I woke with tears already forming, my body remembering what my position forbade. The war intensified. Messages arrived daily now. Losses could no longer be softened by language. Names were included, places I recognized, lives that would not be rebuilt. Each report hardened something in me, not into cruelty, but into resolve, sharpened by grief. I began to understand how rulers before me had survived. You cannot carry everything. You must choose what to feel, and when. Love, it seemed, had chosen itself. One evening, after a particularly long council session, I found myself standing outside the archive wing, without realizing how I had come there. The door was closed, locked, a simple thing, ordinary, final. I rested my hand against the wood anyway. The memories came unbidden, ink-smudged fingers, a voice that teased me for my seriousness, a man who saw me before the crown ever did. I pressed my forehead lightly against the door and allowed myself one moment of weakness, just one. The announcement of my engagement followed soon after. The palace celebrated with rehearsed enthusiasm. Bells rang, banners were raised. The people needed good news, and we gave it to them wrapped in promise and pageantry. The prince stood beside me, his expression calm, his presence reassuring. He spoke kindly to me, softly enough that others could not hear. "You need not pretend happiness for me," he said. "I understand what this is." I looked at him, searching for resentment. There was none. That made the loneliness sharper. That night, alone again, I removed the ring and set it beside the crown. Two symbols of permanence, two choices already made. My reflection in the mirror looked older, not aged, altered, as though some essential softness had been traded for endurance. I whispered his name once. It echoed back unanswered. The breaking point came quietly. A letter arrived without seal or signature, slipped among official correspondence. I recognized the handwriting immediately. He was leaving the capital, accepting a post far from court, somewhere quieter, safer. I could not stay and become a ghost, the letter said, nor watch you become one. There was no blame in his words, only farewell, only love released rather than withdrawn. I read it twice, then a third time. Then I folded it carefully and placed it inside a book he had once recommended, as though that might keep it alive. Something inside me fractured then, not loudly, not dramatically. It was a clean break, the kind that changes the shape of what remains. I rose before dawn the next day and walked the palace grounds alone. The air was cool, the sky pale with promise. Birds sang, indifferent to crowns and wars and broken hearts. I understood, finally, what I had done. I had not simply chosen the throne. I had chosen to survive at the cost of being fully known. The realization did not undo me, it settled, and with it came a grief so deep, so intimate, that I knew it would never leave, only learn how to walk beside me. The confrontation did not come with raised voices or shattered glass. It arrived dressed as ceremony. The day of my formal ascension dawned clear and bright, as though the sky itself wished to reassure the realm. Bells rang from every tower. Crowds filled the streets below the palace, their cheers rising in waves that pressed against the stone. I stood alone in the antechamber, dressed in regalia that had been adjusted and readjusted until perfection felt oppressive. Attendants hovered, careful not to speak unless spoken to. They believed silence honored the moment. In truth, it only sharpened it. As they fastened the final clasp at my throat, a guard announced an unexpected visitor. He insisted. The guard said quietly, "He claims the right of farewell." My heart reacted before my mind could intervene. They should have refused him. I should have refused him. I did not. When he entered, the room seemed to shift, as though memory itself had taken form. He looked thinner, older, perhaps. Or perhaps I was seeing him without illusion for the first time. He bowed this time, not deeply, not submissively, but with respect for what I was about to become. "I leave within the hour," he said. "I wanted to see you once more, as yourself." I dismissed the attendants with a gesture. The door closed behind them, and suddenly we were alone, truly alone for the last time. "You shouldn't be here," I said. "I know, and yet you came." "Yes." We stood facing each other, the distance between us heavy with everything. We were no longer allowed to say, "You look magnificent," he said, carefully. "I feel like I'm wearing armor to my own execution." He smiled faintly. "That sounds like you." I laughed then, unexpectedly. The sound surprised us both. It felt like a crack in the walls I had built, letting light rush in too late to matter. "I'm getting married," I said. "The crown will be placed upon me before sunset." "I know. I wanted you to hear it from me." "I appreciate that." There was no bitterness in his voice, only acceptance. That, more than anger, threatened to undo me. "Tell me something," I said suddenly. "If I had chosen you, truly chosen you, would it have been enough?" He did not answer immediately. He studied my face, as though committing it to memory, not as a queen, but as the woman he had loved. "Yes," he said at last. "It would have been hard, imperfect, ordinary at times, but it would have been enough." The simplicity of the answer stole my breath. "And you?" he asked gently. "If you had walked away from the crown, would you have forgiven yourself?" I opened my mouth to reply. No sound came. The truth rose between us, undeniable and cruel. "No," I whispered. He nodded, not in triumph, not in sorrow, in understanding. "Then this," he said softly, "is the only ending that spares you from hating yourself." Tears blurred my vision. "It doesn't spare me from missing you." "No," he agreed. "It never will." He reached into his coat and withdrew a small object, a folded piece of paper, worn at the edges. "You once wrote me a list," he said, "of things you would do if you were free for a single day." I remembered, riding without guards, eating with my hands, dancing in the street, choosing love without consequence. "I kept it," he continued, "not because I expected you to fulfill it, but because it reminded me who you were beneath all of this." He pressed it gently into my palm and closed my fingers around it. "Do not let them erase her," he said. "Not completely." I stepped forward then, abandoning all restraint, and embraced him. It was not desperate, it was not possessive, it was farewell. He held me firmly, his chin resting briefly against my hair, as though storing the weight of me inside himself. For one suspended moment, the world ceased its demands. Then he released me. "Rule well," he said. "Love deeply, even if from a distance. And when regret comes, because it will remember that you chose with open eyes." He turned toward the door. I did not call after him. I knew if I did, I would shatter everything I had built to stand. The ceremony followed in a blur of light and sound. The crown was placed upon my head, heavier than before, final now. The oaths were spoken. The people cheered. I stood before them, composed and resolute, the image of continuity they needed. Inside, the door had closed forever, and I had been the one to lock it. The cheers faded more quickly than I had expected, not because they were insincere, but because noise is fleeting and consequence is not. When the ceremony ended and the palace returned to its measured rhythm, I was left with the aftermath, the quiet accounting of what had been done. The war continued. That was the cruelest part. The world did not pause to acknowledge my sacrifice. Armies still marched. Letters still arrived, each carrying news that settled like dust upon my days. Victories were celebrated briefly. Losses were absorbed and hidden behind language shaped to protect morale. I learned how to read between the lines. I learned how to authorize actions that would haunt me later, in moments of stillness. How to weigh lives against stability. How to let compassion inform decisions without allowing it to paralyze me. They said I ruled with balance. They did not see the nights I spent awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying conversations that would never continue. My husband, for that was now his title, proved a capable partner. We presented unity convincingly. We shared meals, discussions, even laughter on occasion. There was respect between us, and an understanding that some spaces would remain untouched. He never asked me to love him the way I had loved another. For that, I was grateful. The court watched us carefully at first, then less so as time passed and scandal failed to appear. Routine returned. Stability followed. The realm breathed easier. I paid for that peace privately. News of him came rarely. Once, through a passing remark from a scholar newly arrived at court, he had settled far from the capital, they said, taken up work restoring libraries damaged by conflict, teaching quietly, alive. That knowledge was both comfort and ache. I did not seek more. Loss, I discovered, does not always arrive as devastation. Sometimes it arrives as a low, constant hum, a presence that colors everything without demanding attention. I learned to live with it. The war ended eventually, not in triumph, but in exhaustion. Treaties were signed, borders redrawn. The people celebrated survival more than victory. I stood on the balcony as they cheered, crown gleaming, banners waving, and felt a pride that was real, earned, and incomplete. In the months that followed, the palace softened again. Music returned, gardens bloomed, children laughed in courtyards that had once held soldiers. Life continued. So did I. Yet there were moments, small, treacherous ones, when memory caught me unguarded. A certain quality of light in the late afternoon, the smell of ink and parchment, laughter echoing down a corridor too late at night. In those moments, regret did not accuse me, it simply sat beside me. I understood then that consequence is not punishment. It is the shape your life takes after choice has been made, and mine had taken its final form. Time teaches you which regrets will wound and which will guide. Mine did both. Years passed, not empty years, full ones. Councils, reforms, marriages arranged and alliances strengthened. Children born into the court, their laughter threading through halls once heavy with fear. I learned to govern not only with firmness, but with mercy shaped by memory. The crown became familiar, still heavy, still demanding, but no longer foreign. I wore it as one wears a scar, not with pride, but with acceptance. My husband remained beside me, steady and kind in his way. We grew into something resembling companionship, not the fire of first love, but a shared vigilance, a mutual respect for what had been endured. It was enough, and yet there are truths that never retire. On quiet mornings, when the palace was still and the world seemed briefly unclaimed, I allowed myself to remember him without pain sharpening every detail. I remembered his laughter more than his absence, his questions more than our ending. Once, years later, a book arrived from a distant city. No note, no name. Inside, pressed between pages, was a familiar list, faded now, the ink softened by time. Things I would do if I were free for a single day. I closed the book and smiled. Not sadly, gratefully, because I understood then what regret had given me. It had not ruined my life, it had deepened it. I had loved truly. I had chosen consciously. I had ruled with the knowledge of what sacrifice costs, and therefore with restraint. That knowledge shaped every mercy I extended, every war I avoided, every life I spared when force would have been easier. The people remember me as a good queen. That is my legacy. But in the quiet of my own heart, when no one is watching, I remember myself as a woman who once stood in a garden and laughed without fear. Both truths can exist. Both are mine. And if there is sorrow in that, there is also meaning. The throne demanded my endurance. Love gave me my humanity. I lost one to protect the other, and I will carry them both until the end. If this story touched something inside you, don't let it end here. Like the video so this story can reach other hearts who understand sacrifice and love. Subscribe to the channel for more royal dramas filled with romance, power, and unforgettable choices. And tell me in the comments, what would you have chosen, love or the crown? Your voice is part of this story too.